The fearful avoidant attachment style is somebody who's usually very generous, caring, loving, present, thoughtful about other people in their lives. In fact, they often put so much pressure on themselves to show up in the best way possible in relationships that sometimes it has a downside. And in fact, although fearful avoidants have all of these amazing qualities, they also have a good bit of wounding that is really important to work through, because if you are a fearful avoidant listening to this, it is a lot to be carrying all of those wounds through life and to have so much of that take up a lot of mental, emotional real estate on a daily basis. And as somebody who was a fearful avoidant attachment style and did a lot of the work for deep healing, you will be surprised at just how much inner room you have in your mind, like mental, emotional real estate you have in your mind to thrive, to create, to design your life in a purposeful way when you're not so busy getting triggered by those wounds on a regular basis. So in today's video, I want to have a really honest conversation with you about the main wounds and behaviors that may sabotage relationships for you if you're not careful of them. And we'll talk about some initial things that you can start doing on a regular basis from today forward to move the needle on your own healing journey. Each of these 5 major patterns of behavior is literally the result of trauma. It's definitely not me sitting here saying this is your fault. You have these unhealthy patterns and you're bad, none of that at all. But what I am saying is, hey, there was an injustice. You were traumatized in some way, shape, or form in the past. They caused you to find these really intense coping mechanisms to try to deal with your future events because of that fear of the past repeating itself. And what happens when we do that, when we have these coping mechanisms as a result of trauma, is that we often lose the ability when we are coping to have insight about ourselves. So for example, behavior number 1 for fearful avoidance here is volatility and unhealthy expression of anger. And in the moment that you're doing this, you're not seeing the impact of your patterns, right? You're usually justifying the way you're behaving because of how much hurt you feel. And so in that moment, you lose the capacity to realize the impact. And so I really wanted to make this awareness-oriented video today so that you can see some of the impact, see it for what it really is, and then also have the ability to go, okay, I can start healing this. I see it. I get it. I'm going to go start doing the work around this. And this will allow you to have freedom, not just in your relationships going forward from these painful events that can be co-created, but also it will allow you to free yourself from the past, because as long as we're carrying the coping mechanisms from past traumas, we are still carrying that trauma with us to a certain degree. So let's explore number 1 here. Number 1 is the unhealthy expression of anger or emotional volatility. This is a pattern of behavior that fearful avoidants generally have quite a bit of in romantic relationships. And the reason being that you usually have some big, deep-rooted fear or core wound that's being activated that causes you to feel all this pain and suffering. So let's say, for example, so I was a fearful avoidant, right? I was a fearful avoidant my whole life, and I did work on myself starting about 10 years ago, and then really became fully secure a little bit after that. So sorry, it was longer than that because I started my practice about 10 years ago. So anyways, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that. What essentially happened to me, so let's say if I go back to when I was like 21 years old and I was still an FA, and what I was looking at that experience in time, I was like starting to work on myself, and I was realizing like, oh, I do this thing where I get really angry. And then I think that it's totally fine that I'm really angry. I think it's totally justified. I think that there's no problem with it because I'm really hurt. So I am using my own hurt to justify my angry expression. And for me, anger could be raising my voice. It could be saying mean things to somebody that I loved and then feel really guilty about it after. And the reality was that I thought that was perfectly fine because of how hurt I was. And then when I actually self-observed, I was like, no matter how hurt I am, that's not how I want to show up in the world. That's not the person I want to be under stress. And I should work on that. I should be accountable for that. And that was a life-changing thing for me and a life-changing thing for the future of my relationships. And what that also allowed me to do is learn how to express constructively. I realized, hey, if I'm so hurt, so like, let's say, for example, let's say when I was like 20, I was still in a past relationship. I was very FA in that relationship. And what happened is I would get mad. I'm trying to think of like a specific example. So let's say that that person was incongruent. Okay. Let's say that person that I was dating, they were lying. Okay. And they had some things that they were not being honest about. So this was real. Like this is a real experience. This person was dishonest about different things. And when I would find out about the dishonesty, it would hit my core wound of I will be betrayed and I can't trust, right? And that was such a big wound for me. So what I was experiencing as a person was the pain and suffering of the experience, right? So the pain of having somebody not be congruent, which is not good, right? We have like this uncomfortable situation we're dealing with. But then when that's compounded by this core wound that I've been carrying in my subconscious for so many years, and I've got all this emotional residue around that wound, it's not like a 5 out of 10 of discomfort. Hey, somebody's being incongruent, they're being dishonest. This is affecting me. It's not okay. I have to have a conversation. Instead, it was like a 10 because all the other times that I had stored trust issues from past experiences, plus now compounded in the moment, we've got this like 2-pronged problem. So I was getting angry or upset like a 10 out of 10. And I would say mean things, right? I would be like, oh, see, I can't trust you at all. This is never going to work. Push away the person really far, be harsh with my words, be mean, raise my voice. And I thought that was perfectly fine because of how hurt I was. Like I wasn't observing at that time, like, oh, my behavior is unhealthy. This is not okay. I was justifying that because this person started it, it's fine that I'm behaving this way. And that's not true. There's this wonderful quote I read a few years back, and it's like one of my favorite quotes ever. And it says, he who hates evil only creates more of it. We can't just say that because there's this bad thing happening that then we have a free pass to behave badly back. And obviously like that's common sense when I say that, but I think that when we're in it, it can be hard to self-observe and gain insight. So it's a really important first thing to pay attention to. And when you're looking for how to deal with that, you have to deal with root cause. So you have to be able to be like, okay, like what unmet needs do I have? Can I see those needs through? How can I communicate constructively and more vulnerably? And then of course, like for me in that relationship, certain things weren't changing, right? And that dishonesty was there. And eventually I left that relationship. And so it doesn't mean that you stay with things that are not functional, but it means that you don't justify the way that you communicate and show up.
So I have some really exciting news, and it's that integrated attachment theory training is back. So who is this for? Well, of course, this is for any individual who wants to make an impact and really be of service to others while also obtaining freedom and flexibility and abundance in their lives. And this is also for anybody who's already a counselor, a therapist, a coach, and just really wants to expand their toolkit. We've had so many people enter into the integrated attachment theory program because they're just looking to obtain a certain degree of mastery in terms of understanding their own attachment patterns and also the attachment patterns of maybe their children or partner or other loved ones in their lives so they can really support those people and understand them more deeply. So if you're interested, click the link below to learn more and dive in with me. And I'd love to see you on the other side before seats run out.
So number 2, not trusting. Okay. So healthy suspicion. So when we look at some of these different dynamics, right, you see like the not trusting component, and you see that sometimes when we are fearful avoidance, we've got those core wounds like we talked about. But when there is endless suspicion to a relationship, I can't tell you how many discussions I've had with people when I started running my client practice that said, hey, my partner's always suspicious of me. I'm not doing anything wrong. And it's starting to hurt me because it hurts me to feel like somebody doesn't trust me. And I think it's the same idea. Like when you're a fearful avoidant and you've got that wound, you're busy being a detective, right? You're busy looking for incongruencies and seeing if you can trust the person. And you're on guard, right? And you're on guard because of past trauma. But it stops you because you're so busy being on guard. It stops you from seeing the impact of this behavior on others, right? So we have to work on at a root cause, rebuilding trust, right? And repairing our internal trust baseline. And if we're struggling to trust somebody, we work on trusting them in the relationship and doing what's necessary in order to repair that. So that means communicating with more transparency, developing more consistency, asking for people to take us into consideration by understanding our needs, and also developing our own boundaries better and having our own back so that we trust ourselves to be okay if something goes wrong in the relationship. I think that part of that deep inner fear of having your trust betrayed as an FA is also this fear that like, if something wrong happens, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And, feeling afraid of the fragility of yourself at a deeper level. level if there's pain or suffering in the relationship. And that goes away when we start to become more securely attached within the relationship to ourselves. Number 3 is being hot and cold, that extreme oscillation between should I stay or should I go? Because you're often going through that as the FA for so long, eventually that usually comes out in your conversations or dialogue in relationships. So if you're more of an intense FA, you may find that you threaten to leave relationships. You express your doubt about staying in relationships, either directly or indirectly. And it's because often you're going through those feelings inside of yourself. And it's because of the competing associations tied to love, right? It's that you have been taught through your upbringing, love is beautiful, love is wonderful, I really want love. And love is terrifying and scary, and I can't trust it, and it's confusing. And so because you have separate, completely opposing associations tied to the same thing, being love, relationships, trust, these different dynamics, it's so easy for you to feel like you're in those polarized aspects of self, right? Because you're actually in the polarized aspects of your beliefs about love and trust. And so that makes for the pendulum swinging. One day it's, I really want love, I really want care. The other day it's, I'm scared. I don't know if I want to be this vulnerable. I don't know if I can trust and open myself up. I don't know if I should leave before I get hurt badly. So there's that like swinging pendulum. Number 4, here's a really big one that happens for FAs. Sometimes fearful avoidants can make painful comments. So making mean comments, passive aggressive comments, hurtful comments, because they're actually upset about something else and not communicating about it. And so an example of this could be you felt like there was something that didn't add up, or you felt like somebody was maybe being dishonest with you or upset with you or whatever it might be. So you felt like somebody's taking advantage of you, whatever it might be. And rather than talking about that directly, because FAs tend to have this like block around talking about their needs until, of course, you go in and work on it at a subconscious level. But until you learn to communicate about your needs, usually FAs have to hold in their pain when they're like, oh, I can't talk about that thing, or I don't feel comfortable being vulnerable and sharing that this is affecting me. Because sometimes they're like, I don't want to show that things are affecting me. I don't even want to be that vulnerable. And so you push things down. And then what will often happen is like, 2 hours later, somebody will share something with you and you'll brush it off, or you'll make an offhand comment or passive aggressive comment. And it's actually rooted in the fact that, hey, I'm actually still upset about something totally different from a different period of time, and I haven't addressed it. And our stuff comes out in different ways. Like if we're not expressing directly, it's going to come out in an indirect form eventually. And so that can be a comment that sort of wears and tears at the relationship over time, causes the relationship to feel painful and stressful and confusing for somebody on the other end, and can definitely be a relationship destroyer. And then last but not least, fearful avoidance can do a sudden shutdown. And obviously this can be a big element that can cause destruction in relationships, sort of to point number 4. Because they're not talking about things for quite some time, it builds up, and then they have this abrupt shutdown. And it may not be that they like leave the relationship per se, but they in the very least like shut off, push somebody away, do these really dramatic things of like shutting down. And they can push somebody away for like a day, 2 days. And all of these things, they wear and tear relationships, especially with more anxious leaning people. And it can really contribute to a whole bunch of these different vicious cycles. So that can definitely come up and cause a whole bunch of different sort of pain points or challenges. And usually it's a result or a reflection of fearful avoidants struggling to set boundaries in healthy ways and communicate about their needs in healthy ways. And so it comes out in unhealthy ways eventually, because there's this lagging period between when something happens and then when they feel pained by it and have some way of addressing it. So anyways, these are 5 really important things. I'm not sharing these things to say like, oh, this is so bad, you're so bad. I'm sharing these things because I was here once too. And having awareness and being able to, like I said, observe yourself and gain insight without justification, being like, hey, this can be for any number of reasons that this is happening, but I am going to hold myself to a higher standard. I'm going to do that inner work and healing, because each of these 5 points actually reflect to me points of suffering and trauma that I haven't realized and processed properly yet. And so I have these unhealthy coping mechanisms, but as I break through them, my quality of life will improve dramatically. And that will obviously bleed into the quality of my relationships as well. So I hope this makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you so much for watching and for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this channel. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you in future videos.